We all have those people who enter our lives and make an impact. Some are there for a season, some for a reason, and a few for a lifetime. But what happens when they leave? The silence they leave behind can be deafening. The questions they leave unanswered can linger in our minds for a long time. And then just when we think we've moved on and embraced the space they've vacated, they come back. It can be confusing, even a little painful, trying to understand why someone who left you would return after some time. At first, it might feel like a victory. After all, it's human nature to want to feel wanted, loved, or needed again. But the truth is, there's usually only one reason people come back into your life after they've left. That reason? Growth. It's as simple and as complex as that. People leave your life because they're going through something they need to figure out on their own. They might not be ready to be part of your life when they initially leave, or they might not have understood the depth of what they were leaving behind. They may have thought they needed to explore other things, meet new people, or take time to reflect on themselves. During this time, they undergo personal growth, emotional shifts, or life-changing experiences that alter the way they see the world. And most importantly, the way they see you. What does that mean for you? Well, it means that when someone comes back into your life after leaving, it's usually because they've gone through a period of change. They've had time to heal, to think, and to realize that their initial departure was not the end. They may have learned something valuable about themselves in the process. And with this newfound clarity, they realize that the connection they once had with you is important enough to revisit. They come back not just because they miss you, but because they've evolved in a way that allows them to be a better version of themselves in your presence. In many cases, we all go through periods of self-reflection or personal growth in our lives. But it's not always easy. Sometimes it takes walking away from something, even someone, to realize what you had. People need distance to gain perspective, to see things clearly from a different vantage point. It's only when the noise dies down and they are alone with their thoughts that the true value of the relationship becomes apparent. People change. You change. And if you've been the one left behind, you've likely grown too. You've learned how to be independent, how to face the challenges of life without relying on someone else for validation. You've learned that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's decisions or actions. You've learned to stand tall on your own, to hold your head high, and to keep moving forward. And when they come back, whether it's after months or years, you'll be different too. You'll have your own growth story to tell. But growth isn't always a straightforward journey. In fact, it can be one of the most difficult paths you'll ever walk. The process of growth forces us to face our fears, confront painful truths, and make changes in our behavior that sometimes feel uncomfortable. Growth involves mistakes, self-doubt, and failure. It involves moments of questioning, struggling to stay motivated, and finding the courage to step outside your comfort zone. But growth is also about redemption, clarity, and the power to change. And in those quiet, lonely moments of growth, when you've been forced to see your flaws and learn from them, it becomes clear that the relationships you once had were never fully appreciated for what they were. When the person who once left you returns, they may have gone through their own form of growth. Maybe they've learned from their mistakes. Perhaps they were too immature to realize how much you meant to them in the past, but now they've matured, gained clarity, and are ready to reconnect. Or maybe life has humbled them, and they finally understand what it means to be vulnerable, to let go of pride, and to put their ego aside for the sake of something meaningful. It can be a beautiful thing, the act of someone returning into your life after they've left. There's a certain sweetness to it when both people have grown and evolved, when there's a deeper understanding of what was and what can be. But sometimes when they return, it's not because they've changed at all. Sometimes people return because they've realized they need you, but they haven't truly changed in any meaningful way. They may still be carrying their old baggage, their unresolved issues, and their past mistakes. This is where the challenge lies. Do you accept them back? Do you embrace the idea of reconnecting and allowing them to fit back into your life? Or do you acknowledge that while they've grown, you've grown too? Maybe your growth doesn't align anymore. Perhaps their growth is not the kind of growth you can support, or maybe you've evolved beyond what they're offering. The key is understanding that growth is personal. People change, but not always in the ways we expect or desire. Some come back because they've realized they were wrong and they want to make amends. Others come back because they feel lost and they want to be close to the familiar, the safe, and the comforting. In either case, the reason they return is because they see the value in you that they might not have recognized before. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life if it no longer feels right. In fact, sometimes the greatest sign of personal growth is realizing that someone's return isn't necessarily what's best for you. The strength to move on, to let go, to release the past and embrace the future. That's growth too. You don't have to hold on to every relationship that comes your way, and you certainly don't have to let someone back into your life if they no longer contribute to your happiness or peace of mind. But for those of us who have been through this cycle, the leaving and the returning, it's important to understand that people come back into your life after leaving because they've learned something. And sometimes that's the only reason they need to make their way back to you. They've had a chance to reflect, to grow, and to realize that they want you to be a part of their future. The decision, however, remains in your hands. You've also grown. You've learned what you deserve and what you're willing to accept. And when the time comes, you can decide if their growth aligns with yours. Ultimately, growth is about understanding that people, like all of us, are on their own journey. They may leave and come back, but the reason they do so is often because they've recognized something in you that they didn't see before. Whether it's your worth, your kindness, or the depth of your love, they've learned to appreciate you in a way they never could before. And when they return, it might not be for a second chance. It might be because they've learned to see you through new eyes. And if you've done the same, perhaps the reunion can be something beautiful, something that brings joy, understanding, and most importantly, growth. So, the next time someone comes back into your life after leaving, don't view it as a sign of weakness or uncertainty. Don't see it as an attempt to fill a void. See it for what it really is, a sign of growth, both theirs and yours. Because growth is the one thing that has the power to bring people back into your life, stronger and wiser than they were before.